Hello again. Like many people in Britain, I was a little irritated when the fall of Kabul led to talk of evacuating hundreds of British citizens. A quick look at some of the names soon showed that these were not British people at all, but rather foreigners who had been given a British passport. Of course, nobody but a dyed in the wool racist would have dreamt of pointing this out. All this is part of a very modern trend in which we are encouraged to stop thinking of British people or Italians or Swedish people in the traditional way, but to regard these designations as being pretty meaningless and out of date. After all, we are all citizens of the world now, rather than being so parochial in our thinking as to regard ourselves as belonging to this or that patch of ground in Europe. Of course, nations in Africa and Asia are still allowed this sense of national pride, so that Egypt's official name is the Arab Republic of Egypt. No nonsense there about multicultural societies. To be an Egyptian, you must, by definition, be an Arab and not a black African or Jew. It is only in Europe that we are expected to give up our ethnic identity and accept that a Swede or British person can be of any skin colour, and that we should rid ourselves of those silly ideas about Swedish people being fair and blonde, say. I was prompted to think about this when I saw a headline in the paper which read, "Swedish gang plotted Christmas Eve doorstep murder." A Swedish gang? One imagines a group of people who look a bit like ABBA and have names like Eric Eriksson or Sven Svensson. Actually, the members of the gang are called Anis Hamisi and Esteban Pino Munizago and things like that. They're not Swedish at all, but Albanian and Tunisian. Sweden has a lot of these types now. The city of Malmo is regularly rocked these days by bombs detonated by rival Albanian gangs fighting turf wars, and Sweden has the highest rate of deaths by shooting in the whole of Europe, even worse than in Croatia or Ukraine. Young people today are taught that national boundaries are a bad thing, and that in an ideal world we should all be able to wander about the planet at will. The idea that a country like Hungary or Poland should prevent people from moving freely across their borders is represented as a lack of compassion and a sign of militant nationalism or racism. Europe should be open. So it's all right in Africa to have the Islamic Republic of Mauritania, but if a European country declared itself to be the Christian kingdom of somewhere or other, then that would be Islamophobic or racist, because we don't think in those terms anymore. There is something a bit odd about this when you come to think of it. African countries like Egypt and Mauritania are free to define themselves strictly by ethnicity or religion, and so are Asian countries. But in Europe, we are expected to be inclusive and regard our religious traditions as being a form of prejudice. That's why Christmas has been progressively downgraded over the years, and now there are moves afoot to rename the Easter holidays for schools as the spring holidays, for fear of upsetting Muslims and Hindus. Increasingly, young people are rejecting loyalty to their nation in favour of devotion to ideas or concepts. International ideas and international concepts, of course. They will endlessly debate matters relating to homosexuality, racism, and religious prejudice, while not taking the slightest interest in their own country's welfare. You see, they see themselves as global citizens, and things such as climate change, to give one example, fit perfectly into this vision. It's a cause in which individual countries are meaningless and only a global movement could be of any use. I don't really believe in any grand overarching plot behind this business, but see it rather as a well-meaning idea about the brotherhood of man which has got slightly out of hand. I think that most of those advocating this global vision are honest and dedicated. Unfortunately, there are enough people in the world like Vladimir Putin and the leaders of Iran and various others who are not well-meaning, and they are delighted to encourage this business. The Russians used to subsidise CND, of course, back in the days of the Soviet Union, and the motives then was the same as now, to weaken the West. Can anybody imagine what young people today would do if there was a war? Would the young people of Britain have the grit to fight an enemy, or have they been enervated and had all their resolve sucked from them by constantly thinking about the needs of the world rather than the interests of their own country?